Sue Kedgley.
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to speak briefly to say that the Green Party is very, very happy to support these pieces of legislation and to join in what seems to be a consensus in this House. And we support the comments that have been made by previous speakers, but I just wanted to say in particular, I think that while this will do much to provide support for families and to streamline some of the procedures that are there to assist families, we must do more to address the underlying causes of violence and family violence in New Zealand. And the previous speaker mentioned addiction and mentioned alcohol. We've had compelling evidence in the Justice Committee that that alcohol is one of the major fuels of violence in New Zealand. And so we would hope that this House would adopt a very, very comprehensive and far-reaching approach to try to reduce the harm of violence. And indeed to extend addiction and addiction treatment and alcohol treatment around New Zealand. But the other issue that nobody has mentioned, and I think does deserve a mention, is the amount of violence on television and in film and on computer games. And we know that the violence on television, on computer games, on film is contributing to a culture of violence in New Zealand. There's been extensive research which has found that children who are exposed to a lot of violence on television end up thinking that violence is a legitimate way of solving problems, and they think that violence is more normal, and they do become more aggressive and more violent themselves when they grow up, and this is particularly the case with boys. And we also know that when we did a survey, that I managed to get some funding to do a look at the amount of violence on New Zealand television, and one of the most concerning findings of that study was that cartoons, the cartoons that children watch, tend to be amongst the most violent, have the most episodes of violence on New Zealand television. In fact, some of our cartoons, I think particularly in the Nickelodeon channel, were little more than animated thuggery. Really, if we are going to be serious about addressing violence and the causes of violence, one of the things we need to look at is trying to reduce the amount of violence on television, particularly on the cartoons and the programs that children watch. We need to look at the amount of violence on computer games and on television. And above all, we need to look at, the other thing we need to look at is poverty. We know that impoverished families tend to be more violent, and we know that we must be doing more to reduce the underlying poverty and the inequality in our society. We know that the more unequal a society is, the more likely it will have more violence and more social breakdown in that society. The Green Party has proposed a series of policies which would do a lot to address the causes of, or address poverty in New Zealand, that would actually deliver $60 a week into some of our most impoverished families. And I think we would do well to, as we observe the terrible happenings on the other side of the world and what we thought was one of the safest places in the world, namely London and England, as we observe the violence that is erupting there, and many are saying, yes, it is alienated youth, it is poverty, inequality, that are some of the underlying causes of that astonishing outbreak of violence there, that we need to address the underlying causes of poverty in New Zealand and issues such as the alcohol abuse, the amount of violence on television. Otherwise, these bills, well, they'll be steps along the way, but they're not really going to do much to reduce the underlying causes of violence in New Zealand. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Domestic Violence Amendment Bill number 2, third reading. Care of Children Amendment Bill, third reading. Adoption Amendment Bill, third reading.
Point of order, Joe Goodhue.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I seek leave for the House to rise given such extraordinary progress this afternoon.
Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there anyone opposed to that course of action? There appears not. So it only remains for me to announce that the House stands adjourned until 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the 16th of August in the year of our Lord 2011.